Today we're taking a look at the 2013 Ford Fusion Hybrid Sedan. Now there are really only 4 entries in this mid-size sedan hybrid market right now, and those would be this particular vehicle, the Toyota Camry Hybrid, the Kia Optima Hybrid, and the Hyundai Sonata Hybrid. And that's because Nissan no longer makes a mid-size sedan hybrid. They were licensing Toyota's hybrid system from them for a while. And of course the Honda Accord Hybrid is going to be a 2014 model year vehicle, so it's not out yet. Up front we get Ford's new corporate grille, which is very Aston Martin-esque, and it works really well with the Fusion, especially with these nice aggressive headlamps. It helps make the Fusion probably the most attractive vehicle in this segment, and again, this segment is pretty small, although I do like the way the Kia Optima Hybrid looks. I think that the Sonata won't age too well with its swoopy flowing lines, and really the Toyota Camry is just a little bit boring, if I'm honest. It doesn't look that much different than the regular Camry, and the Camry's kind of designed to be bland. Well, this is trying to be a lot flashier looking. The back of the Fusion isn't quite as exciting as the front, but I still think it'll age fairly well, helping tell the world that you're saving the environment. There's this little hybrid logo there, and of course only one tailpipe in the hybrid model. One thing to keep in mind in terms of repair costs in the future, especially if you're going to have this car for a while and you're worried about bumper dings and that sort of thing, is that the trunk hatch here is fairly flush with this rear bumper. So if you get into an accident, if you're rear-ended by someone, it's probably going to ding up that trunk hatch pretty badly too. Under the hood, you'll find Ford's newest hybrid drivetrain. Over here, we have a 2-liter Atkinson cycle engine. Now, this is slightly smaller than their previous Fusion hybrid, which had a 2.5-liter engine. And then over here, you'll find all the electronic parts, as well as that hybrid transaxle nestled under here. The Atkinson cycle engine and the electric motors together are good for 188 system horsepower. It's kind of a misconception that Ford uses a Toyota hybrid drivetrain. That's really not true. They just so happen to use very similar working principles. You see, the whole system was really devised by TRW in the 1960s, and then, sometime around last century, both Ford and Toyota started working on this hybrid drivetrain simultaneously and apart. At one point, they realized that their designs conflicted with one another, so of course lawsuits flew back and forth, and then they decided to just go ahead and cross-license technology. So the in a nutshell version of this story is that the systems operate essentially the same in Toyota's products and Ford's products. However, the systems are not the same. You won't find any Ford parts under the hood of a Toyota hybrid, and you won't find any Toyota parts under the hood of a Ford hybrid. Now, Ford and Toyota's hybrid systems work very similarly, but the others in this market segment are quite different. Hyundai and Kia took a different tactic, and they have an engine and a regular 6-speed automatic transmission, and they sandwich a clutch pack and a motor where the torque converter would normally be. That means that they tend to drive more like a regular car with discernible shifts between one gear and another, and of course that transmission still has to shift whether it's driving electric only or not. Now, the Honda Accord, although it hasn't been released yet, we've already been told exactly how it works, and it essentially has an engine and a motor, and then another motor, and then the drive wheels. And so it really operates like an extended battery EV. Not like the Volt, however, because the Volt is actually more closely related to this technology than the technology that you'd find in something like a Fisker Karma. So in reality, the Fisker Karma and the Honda Accord share more themes than the Volt or these Ford hybrids. Ford has really been improving the quality of their parts bin lately, and the Fusion benefits from that. Of course, this is fairly closely related to the European Ford Mondeo as well. We have fairly believable wood trim. We have a soft touch squishy dash up here. We do have hard plastic bits here in the lower dash, like that glove box door, although the center console is full of soft touch plastics as well, and it really doesn't get hard, as you can feel all the way back, until this lower panel here where your knees aren't touching. We of course have Ford's 8-inch MyFord Touch infotainment system here in the dash with their touch button bank for HVAC and radio controls. In fact, the only real buttons here are this tune button and the power button for the MyFord Touch system. Of course, we have 2 real knobs as well here in the dash. Now, this is easier to clean than physical buttons would be, but honestly, they're a little bit more difficult to use because they don't always respond, especially if you have dry fingers like I do. In terms of style, my only real complaint is that this interior is very black heavy. This is very Germanic, of course, and this does have European roots, and everybody else is doing this black heavy interior, especially Volkswagen and BMW, but I do think that it looks a little bit small and confining, especially when you compare it to something like the Nissan Sentra or the Nissan Altima. Front seat comfort proved very good even on long car trips. Now our particular model does have the optional power driver seat with two-way power lumbar support. We of course have a standard four-way headrest, which is a nice touch, and a tilt telescoping steering wheel which had a decent range of motion. Now like many vehicles, the passenger seat doesn't have quite the same range of motion as the driver's seat, but on the plus side in the Fusion, all they really excluded was the two-way lumbar support, so the passenger seat just has the fixed lumbar support. Because of the Fusion's sexy side profile, there are a few penalties to pay, and they're paid back here in the rear passenger compartment. First, you'll notice the way that this door opening is shaped. There's this large beam right here, right where your head would be. So not only is rearward visibility a little bit lower than you'd like if you're an adult in this vehicle, it also makes getting in and out of the car a little bit more difficult, as many of our passengers ended up banging their heads right here on this door frame. The other problem is headroom. I'm 6 feet tall, and if I actually sit back in this seat, with my head somewhere near the headrest, not necessarily touching the headrest, then my hair is brushing the ceiling. Admittedly, my head isn't touching it, but my hair is definitely touching it. There's also not as much legroom as you find in the Toyota Camry, or honestly the new Honda Accord, and that's even giving the fact that this seat back is very thin. I don't know if you can see that in this video, but if you look at these seat backs, Ford has really done a nice job of making a very comfortable front seat, but making it very thin. Now I still do have a few inches of legroom left here in the back, but there's not a whole lot of foot room. If I move to the middle seat, the middle seat is fairly comfortable in the Ford Fusion, and there really isn't any hump here in the middle, so that makes actually getting a passenger here in the middle fairly easy. Although the headroom becomes a little bit more of an issue because this seat bottom cushion is a little bit higher. We of course get a center armrest with cup holders, and of course these rear seat backs do fold down, and they fold almost completely flat with the hybrid load floor. And that's important to note because the regular Ford Fusion sedan's load floor is a little bit lower than this. So you can see here in the trunk, the batteries occupy this sort of large area of the trunk there, giving you a trunk that's kind of funny shaped actually. So we have this sort of well here where you can stick luggage. So you can see that's the largest roller bag you can carry on a domestic flight. However, on the bright side, Ford has preserved the trunk pass-through, as you can see there. Now that's quite different than the Toyota Camry Hybrid, which doesn't have a trunk pass-through really anymore. Instead, in the Camry, what they've done is on this side over here, there's really just sort of a hole that you can jam skis through. And it's in kind of an odd position because it's not in the center in the Camry like you would assume it should be. It's over there on the right side of the trunk, meaning that you can't stick long items in the vehicle because they'd hit that front passenger seat. That means that it's now time for our exclusive Trunk Comfort Index. And in order to find out what that will be in this vehicle, we're going to have to do some rearranging. So we're going to have to put that bag over there, and you can move your roller bags on top of that battery shelf. Fortunately, there's enough room that you can fit the largest roller bag you can carry on a domestic flight back there, leaving a decently sized, but definitely smaller than the average mid-size sedan cargo area. Ford fortunately does give you a nice handle here so you can help close the trunk. And in terms of hybrid vehicles, I'd give this vehicle about a 7 out of 10. And that's because even though Ford has covered the hinge areas in this trunk with fabric, they do still occupy a decent amount of trunk space. So if they'd use sort of a hidden hinge arrangement, you'd get a lot more trunk space, and that is a little bit unfortunate. It's not unusual, however, especially when you compare it to the Kia Optima and the Toyota Camry. Let's take a quick look at MyFord Touch. If you're not currently watching this video in 1080p, then go ahead and click that button on your YouTube title bar. Now the system is basically divided into 4 quadrants for the 4 primary functions of the system. We have phone, navigation, if you choose that option, it's about $795 extra. We have our climate control, and then of course we have our infotainment here as well. Now down below, most MyFord Touch systems have touch buttons down here, although there are a few models of Ford products that have real physical buttons down there. The phone screen is your pretty typical car phone interface. We of course get quick dial phone book, we can look at our history, and with this particular system, depending on the phone you have paired, and I have an iPhone 5 paired with this system, you can also send canned text messages to people saying like, I'll call you back later, I'm a little busy at this moment, that kind of thing. Over here on the navigation screen, you can see we have a fairly high resolution screen interface here. The mapping interface is a little bit slower than in the Toyota and Kia products. As you can see, it's a little bit slower to redraw, and response times on this touchscreen in general seem to be a little bit slower than some of the newer systems on the market. Over here on climate, we get a duplicate of the buttons below, as well as some additional buttons. So if you want to change where the air is coming out of this particular system, you have to go in this particular screen, although you can change things like temperature from these touch buttons below. Over here on the infotainment tab, you can see that our particular system has Sirius satellite radio enabled. That's standard on the MyFord Touch systems, but this one actually has it activated. We of course get Bluetooth, we get an SD card for audio-video input there, files on the card. We also get a standard AV input in the center console, as well as 2 different USB ports. The system works very well, but compared to some of the more modern systems around, the system is getting a little bit sluggish. Most notably, the new Chevy MyLink system is much speedier than this particular system, and it doesn't crash. Now, the Toyota Entune systems are very fully featured, but they don't offer quite the number of voice command features and abilities in this MyTouch system, although their systems are, again, more reliable than MyFord Touch. This particular system hasn't crashed on us this week. However, we have had major issues with MyFord Touch systems crashing regularly in other Ford vehicles. Now, you do have full access to your iDevice or USB device via this system or via the voice commands. But as you can see, the loading of the screens in this particular system is a little bit slower than it is in some of those newer systems, again like Toyota and Chevrolet's systems. Because the Fusion and the Toyota Camry hybrid share very similar technology in their hybrid system, you'd expect them to drive very similarly on the road, and indeed they do. In terms of hybrid system performance and the way that the hybrid system feels when you're out on the road, they're very similar, although the Ford system has a level of polish, honestly, that you don't find in the Toyota products. So the transitions between electric-only operation, gasoline operation, etc., as well as regenerative braking to friction braking, are much smoother in the Ford hybrid than they are in any of the current Toyota products. That includes the brand new Lexus ES300H as well. In terms of outright performance, the Fusion scooted to 60 in 7.3 seconds, which is a little bit faster than the Toyota Camry hybrid, but a little bit slower than the Kia and the Hyundai. The Fusion's suspension is better designed to handle winding roads like this than the Toyota Camry, which does feel awfully floaty-boaty and very isolated from the road. Now, the Kia and the Hyundai products are a little bit better, but this Ford Fusion I would still rate higher in terms of handling and as well as road feel on winding roads like this. Now, unlike the C-Max, we were able to get 47 to 49 miles per gallon on a long car trip, so about 35 miles on Highway 101 in moderate to heavy traffic, and that really is the key there. That was traffic that was going between 15 and 65 miles an hour or so, regular stop-and-go kind of a situation. And that's the situation where a hybrid system like this really helps, because you can drive in EV mode for a longer period of time, and a vehicle like this Ford system here, really allows you to go in EV mode much higher speeds than Toyota's current system or the system used by Hyundai and Kia, and that really does help out that stop-and-go traffic. But if you're driving like I do, which is mostly suburban traffic and plenty of highway travel at 65 to 70 miles an hour, then you're really not going to get 47 miles per gallon. You're going to get right around that 40 to 41 mile per gallon average mark. Well, that is a little bit disappointing perhaps, because of course it's rated for 47 miles per gallon. It's not vastly different from the Kia Optima or the Toyota Camry, and in real-world driving in our tests, we averaged higher miles per gallon in this Ford Fusion hybrid than we did in the Camry or the Kia Optima. We went over a few of the electronic goodies in our infotainment overview, but there are a few other gadgets that we should mention, and these are driving-based gadgets. This car has driver alert monitoring, blind spot information, pre-collision warning, and radar cruise control, of course. Now, going over them one by one, blind spot information monitors your blind spot, has radar sensors on the side of the car, and it will tell you via a little light in the side view mirror if there's someone in your blind spot, so that way you can take extra care when you're changing lanes, although you should always still look over your shoulder. This car also has lane departure warning and lane departure prevention. So the system has a camera system mounted up here right behind the rear view mirror, and it's constantly looking out at the road, at the lane lines on the road. And if you veer out of your lane line, this system will actually steer you back in. So if I let go of the steering wheel, if I head over to that white line over there, let go of the steering wheel, you can see the car has actually steered itself back in my lane, and it's returned to center. And the car's also told me to keep my hands on the steering wheel, because the system knows it's not getting any input from me as to keep us in the lane line. Now, this is very different from the other systems that are currently out on the market, because this system will actually steer you back in your lane. And all the other systems currently on the market just brakes on one side of the vehicle to sort of torque vector or crab you back in your lane. They're not quite as effective as this system at keeping you in your lane, because this can apply an awful lot more force. Of course, that means in this particular system you have to use your turn signal, or the car will really fight to keep you in that lane. This car also has radar adaptive cruise control, which keeps you a preset distance between you and the car in front of you. It has a little radar detector in the front that can tell what the vehicle in front of you is doing, and this system operates very similarly to Volvo's recent product line, not their current product line, but their one right before their current generation, because this particular system stops at around 15 miles an hour or so. So if you're in stop-and-go traffic and the traffic slows down to 15 miles an hour, this system will give up and return control to the driver. Part of the radar cruise control package is what you just saw there, and that's the pre-collision warning in this particular vehicle. It's very much like Volvo's system, and it uses that same little LED arrangement in the dash that look kind of like brake lights. So they're bright red, the system beeps, it also mutes your telephone call or your infotainment options here in the center, so that it really draws your attention to the fact that danger is looming. Now, the system is much more noticeable, honestly, than any of the other competitors in this segment. So if you take a look at the systems by Chrysler, by General Motors, etc., they typically will warn you by a little icon in the gauge cluster, which is way down here. And if you're actually paying attention to driving, your eyes are up here. The system also has a much more annoying beep, and that light is very bright, so if you're looking off to the side, either side, you'll notice that one an awful lot more than any of the other systems. Really works an awful lot better for its intended purpose, which is to keep you out of an accident. Of course, the Fusion also gets Ford's Active Park Assist, which is activated by a little button down there in the center console. Now, Ford's system is currently the best parallel parking system on the market, and we'll post a little link sort of down around here to our video and review on the Ford parking system all by itself. The 2013 Ford Fusion Hybrid starts at $27,200. If you check all those little option boxes up, you can get this baby up to just about $38,000 or so. Now, $38,000 is a little bit more expensive than some of the competitors, but remember that this vehicle does come with a number of features you can't find in the competition, like radar cruise control, the active lane keeping assist, the self-parking, etc. We're back at that dramatic camera angle because honestly the Ford Fusion is the best looking vehicle in this very small segment. Now, the looks, the performance, the handling, and the electronics that are available in the Ford Fusion Hybrid are really my reason to prefer this over the other entries in this particular segment. You really need to keep that rear passenger area in mind, however, when you're shopping out there, because the Toyota Camry does have a bigger back seat. And if you have teenagers or adult children that are with you frequently, then that is going to be a consideration for you.